Ich besitze eine Handbüchse zur Selbstverteidigung, genau wie Sigmar es vergessen hat. Wir Banditen brechen in mein Haus ein. Beim Hammer, schreie ich, während ich meinen Federhut aufsetze und meine Handbüchse von der Wand nehme. Ich schieße dem letzten Mann ein faustgroßes Loch in die Brust. Er fällt sofort dorthin. Suche meine Steinschlosspistole auf den zweiten, befehle ihn ruhig, weil das verfluchte Ding bereit ist nur nicht dahin, wo ich nicht ziele, und treffe stattdessen den Hundeschlagfer. Jetzt bleiben mir nur noch die Hurmsturm-Raketenbatterie oben auf der Treppe. Für den Kaiser! Brülle ich, während ich das Ding abfeuere. Der Hagel aus Raketen zerfetzt 2 weitere Männer. Die Wände erbeben, das Dach knarrt, die Fensterscheiben meines Hauses sieten, während in der Ferne ein Hexenjäger abrupt aus dem Schlaf fährt. Der letzte Übeltäter steckt sitten in eine Pfütze seines eigenen Urins. Ich hebe meine helle Bade, senke sie bedrohlich auf ihn und sage mit ruhiger Stimme: Ich schlage vor, ihr ergebt euch. Er verblutet langsam, während er auf die Stadtwache wartet. Nicht wegen einer Wunde, sondern weil der schiere Stress ihn mit einem Herzenfall dahingerafft hat. Genau wie Sigmar es vergessen hat. Welcome, dear viewers, both those returning from my previous video and those who are only now stumbling into the mad, mad world of Warhammer fantasy. To the veterans, I applaud your resilience. To the newcomers, I pray you have a wonderful time, and that you are prepared to spend the next hour or so learning about fictional geography and culture. In this series, we embark on a grand journey through the Empire of Man, the beating heart, if only barely, of the old world. It is a bastion of civilization, standing defiant against the endless horrors that assail it. Be it the local furry convention rampaging out of the forest, the unwashed hordes of barbarians who have yet to discover the wonders of bathing, the endless scheming of its own nobility, or worst of all, taxes. The Empire is a land of contradiction, where treachery and loyalty, honor and cowardice, innovation and conservatism walk hand in hand, each with a pistol prime at the other. Faith is not merely a virtue here, it is a necessity. And that is not just because the cults and witch hunters will have a very stern conversation with you if you falter, but because without faith, one is an even easier prey for the machinations of chaos. Now, the keen-eyed among you, or those with an unhealthy obsession with German history, may already be thinking, hang on a minute, isn't this just a Holy Roman Empire, but with magic? To which I say, yes it is. The Empire of Man is indeed modeled after the Holy Roman Empire, albeit with slightly less border gore and slightly more rampant demon infestations. But this is precisely what makes it so compelling compared to the generic medieval kingdoms that litter the landscapes of our fantasy settings. Its Renaissance-era aesthetic elevates it further, creating a world where knights still charge headlong into ranks of handgunners and cannon fire, where engineers construct actual tanks, designed of course by the old world's very own, no similarities at all, Leonardo da Vinci. I mean Leonardo da Miragliano. While mages summon comets from the heaven, or strip a man's soul away with a mere gust of wind. And so, dear viewer, brace yourself, for with the next few videos we delve into the history, culture, and inner workings of a realm that is equal parts glorious and absolutely doomed. Before we can discuss the Empire in the modern day, we must first go back to when it was still in its infancy, ruled by its first and greatest emperor, Sigmar Heldenhammer. After the Battle of Blackfire Pass, the tribes of humanity had a rare moment of clarity and realized that not ripping each other apart every 5 minutes was actually quite beneficial, especially when greenskins, beastmen, and other horrors were constantly knocking at the door. Thus, they united under one banner, one empire, and one emperor. Sigmar was a man they deemed best suited to lead them, and so he was crowned in Reichdorf by the R. Ulrich, the high priest of the Cult of Ulrich. This coronation marked the official founding of the empire, and set the start of imperial history at 1 IC Imperial Calendar. However, despite how much Sigmar resembles Warhammer Conan the Barbarian, he had a bit of Charlemagne in him as well, and was wise enough to recognize that his realm was far too vast for one man to govern alone, no matter how capable. To solve this, he gathered the 12 tribal chiefs and made them counts, granting them dominion over their respective provinces. They were tasked with maintaining order and governing in accordance with the laws and edicts of the empire. Over time, these chiefs would evolve into the Elector Counts, those who would later gain the right to elect the emperor. To further cement their status, Sigmar received a gift from the dwarves, 12 masterfully crafted enchanted blades, forged by the legendary runesmith Alaric the Mad. These weapons, known as the Rune Fangs, were given to the counts and became both a potent symbol of authority and proof of humanity's long-standing tradition of following whoever happens to be holding the pointiest stick. On a side note, the Rune Fangs have some truly fascinating names. Wissenland sounds properly menacing. Bloodbringer. Avalanche? Mother's Ruin, which is concerning. And then there's Middenland's Legbiter, which sounds less like a fearsome weapon of war and more like an apt description of my dog. For 50 years, Sigmar ruled over the fledgling empire, solidifying its foundations and ensuring its survival. Then, in a move that would set the tone for future imperial rulers, he abdicated. But unlike his successors, who would usually abdicate by way of assassination or catastrophic incompetence or dying of old age and disease, Sigmar left on his own terms, venturing eastward, beyond the World's Edge Mountains, never to be seen again. His ultimate fate remains unknown, but in time he would be deified as Sigmar Heldenhammer, patron god of the Empire. Sigmar did not leave an heir, at least none that was revealed to the public, so the counts were naturally confused as to who would succeed him. He did not even designate who should succeed him. Obviously, the counts argued one against another on who should be emperor, some saying that they should be emperor because of their martial or political skills, while some just outright claimed to be designated as Sigmar's successor by his will. The arguments only got more and more heated as time goes on, until the priestess of Raya, in the retinue of the Count of Stirland of all places, seriously, suggested the counts vote who should become the next emperor. After 3 days of fierce politicking, including threats, promises that no one intended to keep, and good old-fashioned bribery, the Ar Ulrich announced the new Emperor of the Empire of Man, Emperor Folk of Wissenland. From that day onwards, the 12 counts of the Empire are known as the Elector Counts, or Elector, not only ruling over their own provinces, but also electing the next emperor from among the ranks of the Elector Counts. The Emperor will also move the capital to his province capital city, just to complicate the bureaucracy even further. The Empire of Man is now officially an elective monarchy. And we partly have Stirland to thank for that. Good God, that sounds so wrong. For years after Sigmar went away in search of the divine milk, the people he left behind still respected and venerated him as their first emperor. Even before the empire itself formed, the people of the land worshipped many gods and goddesses. But there was not yet a cult dedicated to the worship of Sigmar himself, though surely, somewhere, someone had the thought, yeah, we can make a religion out of this. And then, out of Ulrich knows where, a ragged friar of Nuln appeared in Altdorf and effectively kicked down the doors of theological discourse with the words,
Ja, wir können in der Tat eine Religion daraus machen.
This friar, Johann Hellstrom, preached with unshakable conviction and an excited gleam in his eyes. Whether it was the gleam of divine inspiration, sheer madness, or something far stranger remains a mystery lost to time. What is known is that Hellstrom claimed to have received a vision, one where Ulrich himself placed a celestial crown upon Sigmar's brow, declaring him not just the Empire's first emperor, but its chief god, the divine protector of mankind. Of course, the priests of Ulrich were less than pleased. As far as they were concerned, Sigmar had been a favored warrior, a champion of their god, but divinity? That was a step too far. Their skepticism, however, did not stop the people from listening. To the average citizen of the empire, Sigmar had already been larger than life. He had united their tribes, crushed their enemies, and vanished into myth. Who was to say he hadn't ascended to godhood? Hellstrom's fiery sermon spread across Altdorf like a righteous plague, attracting both zealous converts and deeply concerned scholars. And yet, against all odds, the movement found traction. Within a few years, the Cult of Sigmar was no longer a mere fringe belief, it was a force. The current emperor, seeing both the devotion of the people and the sheer political utility of having a god emperor as a unifying symbol, gave his approval. And in 73 IC, Hellstrom was declared the first Grand Theogenes of the Cult of Sigmar, formalizing what would become the dominant faith of the empire. The rise of the Cult of Sigmar did not happen in a vacuum. The Empire's gods had long been a complicated bunch, each worshipped by different regions and professions, each with their own powerful priesthood. Some took Sigmar's ascension gracefully, others not so much. The cult of Ulrich was outright furious. To them, Sigmar had always been a son of Ulrich, a great warrior, but a god? That was madness. Many of Middenheim's priests outright refused to acknowledge the Cult of Sigmar, and tensions between the two faiths would simmer for centuries, sometimes boiling over into open conflict. The cult of Tol and Raya reacted with mild indifference. Tol, god of the wilds, rivers, and untamed nature, didn't particularly care for civilization's politics, and his priests followed suit. Raya, goddess of fertility and agriculture, was similarly unbothered. So long as the fields still grew and the people honored the cycles of life, what did it matter if they worshipped Sigmar too? The cult of Manan, or Manan, treated the whole ordeal with disinterest. Manan, god of the seas, had no stake in imperial politics. His priests were more concerned with tides, storms, and ensuring sailors didn't drown horribly. If Sigmar had indeed become a god, that was fine. If not, well, it wasn't their problem. The cult of Mor had a quiet concern. Mor, god of death, was responsible for guiding souls to the afterlife. If Sigmar had truly ascended, where did that leave warriors and emperors who died in his name? Were they now under Sigmar's dominion rather than Mor's? It was a philosophical and theological headache, one that would haunt the cult of Mor for centuries. The cult of Verena, goddess of wisdom and justice, debated the matter endlessly. Some Varenan scholars saw Sigmar's cult as a political convenience, others as genuine divine will. Ultimately, they settled on observing and recording events, letting history, and likely Verena herself, be the judge. The cult of Shalia, goddess of mercy and healing, stayed out of it entirely. Their priests continued tending to the sick and wounded, blissfully uninterested in theological disputes so long as the faithful still donated to their hospitals. Despite opposition, the cult of Sigmar thrived, even supplanting the worship of Ulrich in some provinces like Reichland and Stirlen. Within a few generations, great temples to Sigmar were built across the empire, and his priests held immense political and social power. The Grand Theogenes himself, along with his two archlectors, would later be given the status of electors, which really ticked off the Ulrichans since they only get one religious leader as an elector, the Ar Ulrich. Hellstrom's vision had become reality. Sigmar was not just the first emperor, he was a god. And by Ulrich knows what, the empire would never be the same. Since this first series is more of an overview of the aspects of the empire, I will continue the history of the empire on another video, or maybe series. Since if I don't, I might not be uploading for the next 6 months. But in the next maybe 10 or 11 videos, we'll go over each of the provinces of the empire and discuss their geography and culture. We'll go over each in no particular order, their capital city, what they are known for, and other such fun details that make the empire feel alive. Also, I won't cover the capital cities in too much detail since, well, some of them have entire books dedicated to them. I'll make separate videos in the future, discussing each of the capital cities more in depth. In these videos, I'll discuss what aspect I find most interesting of the cities. But for now, I'm afraid this is all the time I have. I believe we have covered enough materials to at least have somewhat of an understanding for our journey through the Empire. I sincerely thank you, dear viewers, for watching this far. Your support truly warms my heart. Well, what's left of it anyway. I pray that you are willing to join me in this grand journey of ours, and I pray that I will be able to make it an enjoyable one. Once again, thank you, and until next time, God be with you.